Hey guys, I just want to take a brief moment to give a shout out to all the great priests in the Catholic Church. Uh, I normally go to Mass at this time to get to a 10 o'clock Mass, but yesterday my wife and I went to the 4 o'clock vigil because Father Blake Britton was doing the homily because our priest, Father Derek, was out of town this weekend. If you're not familiar with Father Blake Britton, I had interviewed him on this show. He's the author of Reclaiming Vatican II, and he's a diocesan priest for our Diocese of Orlando down here in Florida. And he's just gave, and I almost want to say, the best homily I ever heard in my life. But I've been blessed with Father Derek and Father Fidel and Father Paul that give homilies in our churches, and they always give such powerful homilies that I don't want to say it because next week I might hear a homily and I'll be like, that's the best. There's so many times I hear one of our priests give a homily and I'm like, that's the best homily I've ever heard. But let me just tell you, Father Blake just gave such a powerful homily yesterday, just very encouraging. And I wish we taped it. I don't think the church does it streaming, for, people that are homebound, infirmed and they can't get to church. But I don't think they record it. If they do, I'll get it and I'll put it up because this was such a great homily. But basically, he tied in all the readings, and the gospel yesterday reading was where Jesus told the apostles about his crucifixion, and Peter basically said, God forbid, and Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. And he said, if you look at the crucifixion with a Christological mind, the mind of Christ, it's a beautiful thing. But if you look at it as something horrible, you're looking at it from a demonic point of view. And he said, this is life. Either you see things from a Christological, or you see everything that happens, you either see it with the mind of Christ or you see it with a demonic mindset. And he said, the thing, I'm not going to preach this whole homily, but this is just one point. There were so many great points, but I just want to give you the gist of it. The thing the Romans used to put fear in the heart of men, the cross, we hang over our babies' cribs. He said Jesus redeemed the most horrific thing. The death of God is the most horrible thing that's ever happened. And he redeemed it to make it something beautiful. And he can redeem you no matter what horrible thing you have done, what horrible thing has happened to you, whatever is going on in your life, he can redeem it. And he gave the example of St. Maximilian Kolbe in a starvation bunker in Nazi Auschwitz, singing psalms that even touched the evil Nazis that were guarding him, were even moved by this saint. A place that we would think would be the most horrible place that anyone would want to be in made him a saint. So wherever you find yourself, allow God to make you a saint. It was just a powerful homily. As you can see, I'm just giving you I'm just giving you the antipasta. the entree is just too much. It's just too much. I wish I could share it. But like I said, I feel like saying this is the best homily I ever heard. But my wife reminded me of all the great homilies of Father Derek and Father Fidel and Father Paul. And I was thinking, when I was a Protestant, I used to believe the lies that, all the Catholic priests are these liberals. They don't even know the Bible. And these guys have such a rich understanding of the Bible and church history and have such a deep relationship with Jesus Christ that they just encourage me. They always encourage me. And I talked to some older Catholics who tell me, it seems like the past 10 years, the church is producing more conservative, more orthodox priests, more just on fire priests. And I wonder if that coincides with Pope Francis. Has been Pope for 10 years, and he's elected more cardinals. He promoted more bishops to cardinals from places like Africa, Asia, Latin America than any other pope, you know? And I noticed these priests, although Father Blake Britton is an American born, and I got to tell you more about that. My great priest, Father Derek, was born in India, raised in India. Father Paul, who he's actually the priest for the VA down here, the VA hospital, but he's part of our community, so he's in the rotation of priests who preach homilies. He's from Nigeria, Africa, and Father Fidel escaped communist Cuba. You know, so we have a Latin, an African, and an Indian priest, and all of them just contribute so much, you know, to the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I'm just so blessed by our priests. And you know, getting back to Father Blake Britton, he actually went to our parish. He actually went to our Catholic school, and I seen an older woman who I think she taught. She worked in the school. I don't know if she was a teacher, but she worked in the school. And she says, "Yeah, I remember Father Blake when he was a kid. When he was in school, all the girls were crazy about him. He could have had any girl he wanted." And I thought, these priests are so awesome. He could have had any girl he wanted, and he chose the bride of Christ. He chose to marry us and serve us. This kid is about as old as this father, this priest is as old as one of my sons, my oldest son, and so is Father Derek. And they choose to serve us. They deserve our prayers. They deserve our loyalty, you know? And I'm just so blessed when I hear these guys talk and you know, and they're all different. They all have different temperaments and personality. And Father Blake was just so sanguine, and he was just, you could just tell he had so much joy. I mean, he had like a constant smile on his face. You could tell he just enjoyed being a priest, enjoyed serving us. And the humility all these priests show that I see, you know, he grew up in our town. And at the end, after the, you know, Mass was done, he said, and there was, you know, the announcements, Father Blake said, "I just want to recognize 3 very important people today." And 2 were his parents, and they were just, you know, they were just a beautiful couple, stood up and very humble. I never knew that was their son. You know, I've seen them a few times, but, you know, they're not braggadocious about, "I raised a priest." They're just good, devout Catholics that produced a priest for a son, which is awesome. And then he called a girl, and it was interesting because it's a Down syndrome girl. She's about our age, you know, late 50s. And my wife is friends with her and her friend, another Down syndrome girl about the same age. And she noticed that they were very upset. And they're usually laughing and full of smiles. And they were very upset. And my wife went over and talked to them. And they were just having a bad day. And they weren't getting along. They weren't sitting together. They usually sit together like friends do. And my wife got them to sit together. And then my wife prayed for them, but they were kind of mad at each other. They weren't talking to each other. And, you know, so my wife was saying, "Well, at least I got them to sit together. I'm going to pray for them." And then at the end of the Mass, Father Blake honored one of the girls, and she came up and gave him a hug, and the other girl came up and gave him a hug. And it was just so beautiful. He said, "I just want to honor Sarah because when I was 15 years old, I became a bag rep Publix, which is like our local supermarket here. And she was my boss." And she taught me how to bag. And she's like, "Yep, you got to keep the meat separated from the fish," and yada, yada, yada. And it was just so beautiful. It was just so beautiful that this priest, who I'm going to have on Blue Collar and a Scholar. I had him on Blue Collar and a Father to talk about his book, Reclaiming Vatican II, that I recommend everybody read. Very important book. But the reason he was at our church yesterday, because our diocese allowed him to go to school full-time to get his doctorate of theology and another high degree. It sounded even higher than a doctor of theology, if there is such a thing, but I never heard of it. I can't even repeat it. It was a name I've never heard, but basically 2 doctorate level degrees. So this guy's a scholar. And even my priest told me when I interviewed him last time, he goes, "Oh, you should have him on Blue Collar and a Scholar. He's a scholar." I'm like, "Well, you don't have a doctorate degree yet." You know, it's kind of like my criteria. I don't know. My son says you don't need a doctorate to be a scholar, but that's kind of like my I don't know. Anyway, that's how I see a scholar, someone with like a PhD or a doctor in their name. So long story short, I'm gonna have them on Blue Collar and a Scholar. And if you didn't see the video, I'll put it up on the community board, the one I had, and you'll see what this guy's just a wonderful priest. It's like all my priests, you know. So be thankful for your priests, you know, and be thankful that the Catholic Church is growing. In the past 10 years, I've said this before, you know, our Protestant brothers and the Southern Baptists, they lost 450,000 members just in the last 3 years. In the last just over the last 3 years, the United Methodist Church lost over 5,000. Whole churches broke away. Yet the Catholic Church keeps growing. There hasn't been 1 year in the history of the church, from 33 AD to 2023 today, that the Catholic Church has not seen an increase in membership. You know, and during the past 10 years, while Pope Francis was Pope, surveys, according to the Pew Research company, surveys show that most people are becoming nuns, no religion at all, you know. Nuns, N-O-N-E, what's your religion? None, you know. And Protestantism, they're losing members. But the Catholic Church has grown. And everyone says, well, you know, because the world population has grown. But the world population grew like 9.2% over those past 10 years while Pope Francis was Pope. But the Catholic Church has grown 9.8%. So we're outpacing the growth of the world, which is pretty awesome. Because in the book of Acts, it said the church met every day to break bread, have communion. What church does that today? Only the Catholic Church. We have daily mass, where we have communion. And it added to its numbers daily. What church does that? Only the Catholic Church. So again, another piece of evidence that we are the church that Jesus Christ established. And we got a whole new crop of young priests coming out that are so on fire, so orthodox. And, you know, now with YouTube and information, a lot of Protestants are seeing that reason and faith go hand in hand. And the Catholic faith is the most reasonable of them all. So God bless, stay Catholic, and do me a favor. If you're buying or selling real estate, support a pro-life Catholic real estate company, realestateforlife.org. God bless.